Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My brother-in-law, 30, let's call him Duke, and my sister-in-law, 25, let's call her Deanna, have been together for 2 years. This summer they had their wedding. I am still reeling. Let's start from the beginning. Duke and Deanna got engaged winter of 2023. In spring of 2024, they were evacuated from where they lived, 12 hours north of us, because of a forest fire. Of course, we said they could stay with us. This included them and their 2 large dogs. We live on an acreage and have 2 large dogs ourselves, so this isn't an issue. Or so we thought. Duke and Deanna enjoy some recreational activities, which is legal where we live. To each their own. However, we at the time had 2 young children and now have 3. Legal or not, there are no D allowed in our home. They were respectful of this rule and kept it outside, although our home reeked the entire time. While here, they would not take care of their large hyper dogs, and it became my responsibility as my husband works full-time and I am home with the kids. Their dogs are not well behaved, and I did not feel comfortable taking care of large dogs constantly jumping at me and starting fights with our dogs. Our dogs are large but lazy and don't jump. I promise the dogs are relevant. They would leave late at night and drive high. I don't want to have to deal with that responsibility if anything happens to them. Anyways, during that time, my other brother-in-law, let's say Tim, got married that year while they were down here for the evacuation. He is brothers with my husband and Duke. Duke and Deanna were late to help with setup, and over an hour late to the intimate rehearsal dinner because they were napping, smoking. Throughout the wedding, Deanna was commenting about all the things she would never do at her wedding. It was a classy and well-done wedding. It is clear from so many small instances that they have no respect for others, their boundaries, property, or time. While they stayed with us for 3 weeks, waiting to be allowed back into their home, nothing was damaged. They planned their wedding, sort of. They asked if they could have their wedding on our property. This is where my husband and I got married in the height of COVID. Before my husband bought the house, it was family land. We said we would consider it because it could be considered a special spot to Duke. After 3 weeks, they went back up north. My husband and I talked about it and decided we could not host a wedding for them. That summer, I became pregnant with our 3rd. My husband works a lot of OT in the summer, and they were aiming to get married July 2025. We didn't think we would be able to get the house or property wedding ready. As well, I didn't want to have to host a wedding while caring for 3 young children, as our baby would be a newborn at that time. And on top of that, much of Deanna's family partakes in recreational activities, and we couldn't trust that these people we didn't know would respect our rules of no D in the house. Now, the one thing this family lacks is communication, and we must take responsibility for our lack of communication. They said they thought our place would make a good venue. They did not say for sure they wanted to get married there, so we waited to hear about more wedding plans. We didn't want to have to say no and be assholes if they chose a different venue. We assumed after announcing our pregnancy that they wouldn't expect us to host with a new baby. We told family about the baby in August 2024. They never followed up with us, and since we didn't agree to hosting, we assumed they found a different wedding venue. Fast forward to February 2025. I am as pregnant as it gets, and honestly, my mental health wasn't great. Duke and Deanna send out wedding invites. Location? My address. When? July. I was livid, but my husband, who was also upset, handled it very well. He told them we were unable to accommodate them, and he was much kinder about it than I would have been. We expected a fight, but they agreed to change the venue. We appreciated that greatly. And it was e-invites, so not costly to change or resend. Free, in fact. Now, you may have already decided I am the a-hole for making them change their venue. But let me paint a picture for you of their wedding and celebration. After we said our place was a no-go, they had to look for another venue. But it was difficult because they wanted a specific date. A Thursday. We thought that was weird, but whatever. My husband asked why that date was so important, and we were told, "You aren't allowed to ask." Okay. Now it's the end of June, and they are getting married the beginning of July. As expected, this wedding is messy and unorganized. At this point, they have had 1.5 years to plan and prep for this wedding. All decor is DIY, and so was mine for my wedding. My mom and I did it all during our engagement. Duke and Deanna have done none of it beforehand. Everything is brought down. They still got married down here, to be made and done only 2 weeks before the wedding. During this time, they are staying with mother-in-law and father-in-law because I was not hosting and caring for their insane dogs with young children and a new baby. The family thinks I'm ridiculous for not catering to the needs of the precious family and his soon-to-be bride. They try to passive-aggressively encourage us to take the dogs to our house because there is more space on our property. We did not cave. I started to wonder if I am being the a-hole. It is their wedding. Maybe I should be more lenient. But apparently Deanna doesn't like anything mother-in-law cooks. I don't always agree with my mother-in-law, and we don't always get along, but she is a good woman, and she would cook anything for anyone. And sister-in-law keeps saying, "Oh no, I don't like that," and won't eat with the family. She will only go get fast food after the meal. Father-in-law cooks a steak. She requests a hot dog instead. They, of course, give her what she wants. But suddenly mother-in-law is very upset when they leave to stay at a hotel a few days before the wedding, and she is left to care for the dogs and cats. Yes, they brought their cats. Because apparently there is no house sitter or animal caretaker where they live. And that's why we didn't want the animals at our house. My daughter had her second birthday the first week of July, and it was great to have them in town so everyone could come for the party. Just a super chill wiener roast. Sister-in-law is upset, it's hot dogs, and won't eat anything. It unfortunately rains, and we have to move the party inside. She sits outside and will not come in to do cake and presents with her niece. I know my daughter won't remember, but it frustrates me when family won't make an effort with my kids. She's 2. Just come have cake with her. Supposedly, she has social anxiety, which is fair. Except she sure didn't have any during her wedding celebration, which I promise we will get to. It wasn't a big birthday party, just a little celebration with family and a couple close friends. So it's the day before the wedding. I go with lots of other family to help decorate and set up the hall. But we aren't setting up. We are making the decorations. They've had a year and a half. We are making signs, bouquets with fake flowers. Could have been done in advance. Centerpieces, painting signs, and decorating an arch. Nothing was organized. We went out to grab more supplies. It was 30 degrees Celsius in a building with no AC. Her dad had to stop helping to bathe his dogs? It was wild. I worked hard and so did everyone else. They worked their asses off to pull this wedding together for Duke and Deanna. Because despite my bad attitude, we do love them. So rehearsal. The chaplain isn't there to run the rehearsal. We are missing a groomsman, and the littlest flower girl, 18 months old, isn't there to practice. Deanna is looking lost, so I offer to help. I'm no expert, but I've been to a lot of weddings recently and explain how things are usually done. And I ask if she wants me to step in, or if she wants me to just sit and be quiet. She did ask for my help, so I directed the processional. It's messy, but we practice and it's okay. She's very specific about the timing of her entrance, which I get. The little parts matter. I told her we might have to loop the song as it's quite a long walk, down a hill, to where they are saying their vows. Don't worry, it's relevant. South finally. Day of the wedding. We get to the hall. Deanna is there. Not ready. Freaking out about decor still. The groom and groomsmen are almost late because they realized that morning that he didn't have a tie. They also had to stop and grab alcohol for the wedding the morning of. Because why would we be prepared? When Duke gets there, Deanna starts fighting with him about stuff he was supposed to do, but didn't. It's a mess. Finally, whatever the hell is going on is resolved, and she keeps getting ready. The wedding ceremony starts 30 minutes late. In the grand scheme of things, not bad. Probably the best part of the day. So things are off to a rocky start. No one thought to bring the speakers out for the music. We finally get it set up and we can start. I'm at the top of the hill with the flower girls and ring bearer. 2 of the 4 kiddos are mine. My son is almost 4, and he's the oldest. I ask him to hold the littlest girl's hand and help her down the hill. Most 18-month-old kids haven't been walking for long, and they certainly haven't mastered hills. Music is playing. The bridal party is making their entrance, but not fast enough. Deanna starts freaking out. Why aren't they going fast enough? I said. It's okay, we can loop the song. The grandmas took a little longer going down the hill than expected. They were walked down the hill with help, but old ladies take a while. She snaps at me. No one gets how important it is until it's their moment. I didn't say anything. I don't want to be rude. It's her wedding and it can be stressful, but I of all people get it. I replanned my wedding 4 times during COVID to follow all the rules. She throws her phone to me. It's connected to the speakers with the music, and she doesn't want to carry her phone down the aisle. Fair. We probably should have thought of who was controlling music during the rehearsal, but I'm not a wedding planner. Oh well. Now it's time for the children to go. My son is going slow because the little girl can barely walk, and it's downhill. Deanna snaps at the kids to hurry up. They turn around and start coming back up because they think they are doing something wrong. She snaps again, grabs the littlest one and barrels down the aisle. My son is sensitive and starts to cry because this aunt that he barleys knows is yelling at him, and there's lots of people around he doesn't know. I take my kids and go sit down. I can only imagine what pictures look like. And somehow it doesn't end here. They have super fast vows, and here's the twist. The chaplain announces they are already married. It is their 1-year anniversary. No one says anything. No one claps. They kiss. Dead silence. It's a fake wedding. She yelled at my kids for a fake moment. It's fine to elope, and it's okay to celebrate at a different date if you can't afford it. But to lie to everyone for a whole year. Now we know why the date was so special. And a year before they posted a pic of them both wearing rings, and I asked, "Did you guys get married?" It's a men's engagement ring. My husband was in the wedding party, so of course he was in photos. They had to take multiple breaks during photos to light up and get some fresh air. They were over an hour late for the reception. Wild. Everyone at the wedding is pleasant, but it for sure put a damper on the whole mood. Not gonna lie, I checked out. I did not help with cleanup. I wasn't gonna drag my kids back to the hall for another day, and my husband wasn't taking another day off of work for this. He was hurt. His brother got married and didn't tell him, or anyone about it. My cousin told me to take our gift back. Thought about it, but we didn't LOL. Many people traveled so far for this wedding. Anywhere from 5 to 23 hours of driving. Or flights. For a fake wedding. For a joke. I don't even know how to end this. There were so many small things that happened. My husband did not hide how he was feeling. Deanna asked me, "Is your husband mad at me? He seems kind of grumpy." I just laughed and walked away. South am I the a-hole? I didn't let them have their wedding at my house. I didn't help with cleanup, and I don't want them to stay at my house again. I feel like they have no respect for the time, property, or boundaries of others, and I don't want her around yelling at my kids that she won't take the time to make an effort with. Am I overreacting? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it wasn't a real wedding. Not the a-hole. You did way more than I would have from the beginning, and even agreeing to think about allowing them to have it on your property. Then circumstances changed, and they didn't say anything, so you assumed they didn't want to use the property. I see nothing wrong here, except entitled people who thinks the world should revolve around them. Also, as for not telling anyone they got married the year prior, I had friends from church get married in front of their parents and siblings. Only about 3 months prior to the actual wedding, because one of them is military, and in order for everything to go smoothly, they needed about a 2 to 3 month lead time to get paperwork done. They still had their actual wedding on the date they had intended, but did the legal stuff beforehand because of the legalities for the military. That said, I don't care so much about that, but the way she treated the kiddos is insane, and it shouldn't have happened. When they have kids, I'd recommend keeping your distance. They sound like parents who will think their kid is perfect, not the a-hole. You were far more generous with your time than Duke or Deanna had a right to expect. They took your goodwill and pretty much stomped on it through stupidity and a lousy sense of humor. Low contact is reasonable until the two of them grow up, if that ever happens. They eloped in secret and couldn't even stop themselves from posting on social media. What dinguses? A man's engagement ring? No one called him out on that? I know the title makes me sound like an a-hole, but I'm hoping my explanation doesn't. My wife exclusively breastfed our daughter for 6 months. After she returned to work, it was too hard to find time to pump as a busy ER nurse, so we switched to formula. No big deal. When our daughter was 18 months old, My wife was miserable in her job due to a new manager and wanted to quit. We crunched the numbers, sold a car, downsized a lot, and made it work. It's super tight. We had about $50 to $75 a month left after bills, groceries, etc. A year ago, my wife talks about wanting another baby. I was about to start a nurse anesthetist program and told her I'd prefer to wait when our situation was better. She talked about how since we already had cloth diapers, all the baby gear, and she could exclusively breastfeed this time since she wasn't working, that it wouldn't add anything to our finances. I reiterated I'd prefer to wait, which she took to me not saying no, went off birth control without telling me, and was pregnant in a couple months. Fast forward to 16 weeks postpartum, and my wife says she doesn't want to exclusively breastfeed anymore because formula is easier. She's having no supply issues or latch issues. She just doesn't want to anymore. I told her that we couldn't afford formula, and that if that's what she wanted to do, then she'd have to go back to work. She could easily find a PRN position and work a few times a month. I'm in school Monday through Thursday, but home mid-afternoon, and I work weekends, and our parents both said they'd provide childcare if need be. My wife thinks I should just pick up an extra shift, which I could do, but currently I have every other Friday off, and it's my day to study, do some chores, and spend time with my family. Before anyone asks, I'm heavily involved in the household. I clean and cook, and take care of the kids just as much as my wife, except breastfeeding. The older one is in pre-K during the day, so it's not like it's hard to nurse the baby because she's minding the toddler. It's her body, and if she wants to stop, that's fine. But even with coupons, discounts, etc., $15 to $35 cans of formula are not in our budget. Quick edit. My wife is getting roasted in the comments. I was going to leave out how she got pregnant, but I felt like it would make it seem like we weren't careful, and I'd be an a-hole because I should have been more careful and not gotten her pregnant. My wife's intent was not to deceive me or go behind my back to get pregnant. The conversations around having another baby were long and plentiful, with me agreeing with her on a lot of stuff like, yes, it'd be nice to have kids a little closer in age. Yes, I can see how your revised budget would work. Yes, I know it took a long time for you to get pregnant before. Yes, I think Maddie would be a great big sister. But at the end, I always said I'd prefer to wait. It took us a year after my wife went off birth control to get pregnant the first time. She assumed it'd take the same amount of time, and if she timed it well, then going off birth control when she did, and then 3/4 of a year pregnancy, I'd almost be graduated. She should absolutely have told me she never refilled her birth control prescription, but she made a mistake. We worked through it, and she is not a horrible person. Not the a-hole. After reading the title, I was ready to go in guns blazing, but knowing she ignored you and basically decided to get pregnant without your consent, I think it's a reasonable request. She decided to not respect your logic and get pregnant anyway. She needs to suck it up and step up and provide more for her family, especially since it's not a supply issue. It's her decision certainly if she wants to stop breastfeeding, but if that decision costs money, she needs to put her big girl panties on and help cover the finance gap her decision will leave. Her decision to get pregnant behind your back was a poor one, and she needs to accept the ramifications of said poor decision. Not the a-hole. Your wife is for not telling you about going off birth control. Wow, that is a huge waving red flag. It's no a-hole for everything else though. I get that she doesn't want to breastfeed anymore. That kind of makes me wonder if there are any postpartum issues going on with her though. If your budget is really that tight, then it doesn't make you an a-hole for wanting some financial help from your wife. I don't think I could be comfortable living paycheck to paycheck like that since you could be injured and you need an emergency savings account for times like those. Not the a-hole. Holy crap, dude. You're the only breadwinner. Y'all are tight on funds. And she just stops taking birth control behind your back? Now she wants you to work more? Your wife is massively the a-hole here. That's manipulative and irresponsible, and I second that suggestion for counseling. Golly. Myself, 29 female, and my husband, 30 male, are child-free. We don't have kids at our place. We don't babysit, and we don't linger long at gatherings where there are kids. Most of them. My brother and my sister-in-law, both 25, have 2 children now, 5 male, 0 female. A few months ago, they asked if we'd be willing to watch my nephew whenever the time came for her to have my niece. We said no. I work a lot, and my husband goes out of town for his work. So odds are one of us would have to call out on short notice. Knowing this, they hired a sitter. Well, my sister-in-law went into labor 2 weeks early, and the sitter had virus and couldn't come. They begged me to watch my nephew, but I said no. Husband was out of town, and I had work that entire week, and I didn't know how long this was going to take. They said it was an emergency, to which I reminded them, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. My brother ended up having to leave her at the hospital to watch my nephew. This was 2 months ago, and he and my sister-in-law have been blasting me to the family as some demon. It's a good thing I didn't take him. She ended up having a C-section and spent 4 days total in the hospital. That much time off, no notice, would have pissed off my boss. They're now saying I'll never get to meet my niece, which I don't know why they think that's a threat. I'm not exactly a fun aunt. Our mom, who lives in another state, has taken their side and says that I should have watched him. But I don't see why I should be a babysitter just because my brother has poor planning. You're the a-hole. They did plan. You yourself admitted they planned. Their plan fell through for a legitimate reason. It was incredibly cruel and heartless of you to make your brother have to miss the birth of his child because you wanted to be petty. I suggest you take some time to soul search and figure out why you resent your brother, your sister-in-law, and your niece and nephew so much. Perhaps they are right to cut you out of their lives. You sound incredibly bitter. You're the a-hole. Massive one. This was a true emergency, and their plan was disrupted by virus. The world isn't black and white. When you love someone, sometimes you make small sacrifices or step out of your comfort zone because you love someone. The way you handled it was pretty crappy. Your sister-in-law had to undergo a serious operation alone because you wouldn't budge. Someday you will need help, and karma may come knocking. Not the a-hole. I'm not sure what these commenters expect. Is OP supposed to magically pull a 5-year-old proofed home out of her butt? Is OP supposed to give up their food and rent money by missing out on work? It's a bad situation, but it's not OP's obligation to be the backup plan. They already said no. Sister-in-law had 9 months to plan a backup in case something went wrong. My wife, 39 female, and I, 41 male, have been married for 5 years. My wife has a daughter, Anne, 22 female, that she had while she was still in high school. Anne still lives with us. The father isn't involved at all. Given that I came into their lives when Anne was a teenager and her non-existent relationship with her own father, Anne doesn't really view me as a father, and I'm okay with that. I defer pretty much all parenting issues to my wife, and this has worked for us. When we got married, I moved into the house that my wife and Anne lived in. It was in rough shape, and I spent a lot of time and money making improvements and renovations. It's not a big house, only 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, but it works for our small family. But about a month ago, my wife found out that she is pregnant. It's completely unexpected, but we were both incredibly excited. However, we don't have room for the baby in our current home, so we will need to find a new place. Given the renovations that I had already done in our home, the value increased a lot, and since my wife had been living here for a long time, her mortgage was low, and we could get a very nice return if we sold. This would allow us to upgrade to a 3-bedroom house, but money would be tight with a higher mortgage and the cost of raising a baby. Tight, but possible. My wife was insistent on it being 3 bedrooms because she wants Anne to have a space in the new house too. I did some research on prices for 3-bedroom houses in our market and put together some preliminary budgets. I showed them to my wife and talked to her about how frugal we would need to be, but that we could make it work. I also brought up asking Anne to contribute to the household financially if she is going to live with us, something that my wife has never asked Anne to do before. Anne works 2 part-time jobs and doesn't make a lot of money, so my wife never asked her to help pay for anything. Anne pays for her own car and cell phone, but that's pretty much it. I told my wife that if Anne is going to live with us, having her pay rent and help with bills is going to take a lot of the edge off our budget. She said she would talk to Anne about it on her own first. That conversation didn't go as well as my wife and I had hoped. Anne was very resistant to the idea and pretty much told my wife that it's our choice to have a kid and it's not her fault if we can't afford it. After that conversation, my wife and I had a talk with Anne, all 3 of us. I showed her the same budgets that I showed my wife and explained to her that both her mom and I want her to live with us, if that's what Anne wants, but that she is an adult and if she's going to live in a new house with us, she's going to have to contribute financially like an adult. She accused me of turning her mom against her and for caring more about an unborn kid than her. She said that we are forcing her to bend to our rules or make herself homeless because she can't afford to live on her own. Obviously, you can afford to have a baby. What you can't afford is to continue financially supporting an adult daughter. It sounds like what you've asked her to pay is fair, and it's awesome that you've been transparent about budgeting. Not the a-hole, But it's going to be a sticky situation if she simply refuses to pay. You'll need to work out with your wife at what point y'all will actually kick her out. Not the a-hole. It sounds like you have crunched the numbers and are not demanding anything unreasonable, unless the rent amount is wild, which I would think her mom wouldn't allow. Paying basic living expenses like housing is part of life, and she is old enough to start doing it while still having a safety net. Not the a-hole. Ann needs to contribute something to the household, even if it's just $100. So what if she never had to pay before? She's an adult now, and y'all are struggling. She needs to help or find another living arrangement. She sounds very immature. My wife Anna and I have been married for 3 years. She is currently 7 months pregnant with our first child, planned. However, ever since about 3 months into the pregnancy, Anna, for the most part, cannot stand me. She's been extremely hot and cold, but she now gets significantly more upset with me than she ever has before. She has given me the treatment for taking too long in the shower and using all the hot water. She broke down yell crying at me one day because I was an hour late coming home, and I didn't answer the phone. There was traffic due to a wreck, and I don't get messages or calls when driving. Crying and saying I hate her and our daughter because we wouldn't agree on a crib. These are just a few examples. Anyways, I left some dishes soaking in the sink yesterday with the intention of doing them before I left. If I'm being honest, I forgot to clean them. She texted me to tell me that I needed to clean the kitchen when I got home, since I left it in such a mess. I apologized and said that I would clean it when I got home in the afternoon. I got home from work that afternoon and immediately went to shower. If I smell at all from work, she gets nauseous and therefore irritable. By the time that I got out of the shower and changed, Anna had gotten home and was cleaning the dishes that I said I would do. When I offered to do them, she said that it was okay and that she's used to it. This does not happen often. I said that was kind of an unfair thing to say, and she raised her voice and said that I've always been this inconsiderate and told me to duck off. This upset me probably more than it should have, but I had a bad day at work, and I just felt like she was being unfair. I yelled at her and said that I'm tired of her always being mad at me, and if she wants to find someone better, I will gladly get out of her way. She immediately started crying and said that she didn't mean it in that way, apologized. I left to go on a drive and cool down, and when I got back, she was still crying, now significantly harder in the bathroom. When I apologized for losing my temper, she just said to leave her alone. She almost slept on the couch until I made her switch with me. It's been a full day since this happened, and she hasn't said a word to me, other than to say that she doesn't want to talk. The thing is, while I feel bad that I lost my temper at her, I feel like she's just been using me as her punching bag ever since her pregnancy hormones kicked in. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. You used all the hot water. You were an hour late coming home and didn't call to say you'd be late. You didn't do the dishes because you forgot. If those are the 3 things you're admitting to, what else is there? Because in my experience, people who forget to do the dishes and leave them in the sink overnight tend to forget other things as well. And ultimately you threaten to leave her and make her a single mom. Your wife is pregnant, hormonal, and rapidly moving into the miserable phase of pregnancy where your whole body aches. You can't do anything you used to do. Your joints ache, and your hips feel like they're disconnecting from your body. You feel fat, unattractive, and awful. Your hormones are all over the place. You can't sleep at night. You pee every 10 minutes. You get heartburn and reflux if you so much as think about food. You want to be done with this already, but at the same time, you're terrified of labor. All you can think of is everything that might go wrong. This is the point in your marriage where you should be bending over backwards to make things easier on her, not forgetting to do the dishes or using all the hot water so she can't take a shower. So yeah, you're the a-hole, not just for what you did, but for being completely obtuse about the whole situation. From one man to another, Soft, you're the a-hole. I understand why you feel this way, but you could have expressed your frustration with your wife in a better way. You're not the a-hole because pregnancy hormones aren't an excuse to belittle your partner at any given opportunity. But you are the a-hole for threatening to leave, serious or not, at a point in time when she's incredibly vulnerable and about to welcome a child into the world for the first time. Give it a couple more days, ask your wife to talk, and calmly explain your feelings to her. It seems like you both realize where you may have been at fault already, and do your best to make the next 2-ish months as stress-free as possible for both of you. Because the last thing you want is for your relationship to be unstable and have a newborn to take care of while the two of you aren't on good terms with each other. Show her that you're in this with her, if you really are, and continue to be supportive for her through actions, not just words. I, 35 female, have been with my husband Victor, 43 male, for 3 years, married 6 months. He has a 24-year-old son, Colin, from his previous marriage. Colin and I have met several times, but he was living across the country until recently, and we didn't really get to build much of a relationship. We were polite to each other, but he wasn't interested in conversation with me, and I didn't want to push. Colin recently got an opportunity for a very good job in our area, and so moved back to our state, and has been living with us since the beginning of the year. The intention was for him to stay here for 6 months, while he acclimates back to the area and finds his own housing. My husband works on oil rigs, so his schedule is 2 weeks on, 3 weeks off. He went back to work 8 days ago, and it has been just me and Colin at home. Colin is polite to me when his father is around, but he's completely different when he's not here. He goes out of his way to eat my food. I have celiac disease, so I have specific foods that I've asked him not to touch. He calls me a bee when I tell him he needs to do his own dishes or pick up the clothes he leaves on the bathroom floor. He puts my cat outside if he meows. He stays up late shouting while he plays video games and tells me to shut the duck up if I ask him to stop. I'm so sick of this crap already, and I'm keeping myself under control, but I'm going to blow up soon. I'm tired of being called names by a grown man who contributes nothing. I'm sick of picking up boxers and washing extra dishes. I'm not doing it anymore. If Victor wants him to stay when he's home, then that's a different argument, but I'm not putting up with it on my own time anymore. He has to find somewhere else to stay during Victor's work weeks, or I'm setting up cameras all over the house because Victor only sees one side of him and doesn't seem to fully believe me when I tell him how Colin treats me. I was talking with my friends to sort out my thoughts before I bring it up with Victor, and she was adamant that I couldn't do that it was unfair to kick him out of his father's house, and that I have to deal with it because that's what happens when you marry someone with kids. I think this goes way past the kid adjusting to new spouse phase, and I don't believe I have any obligations to be treated like garbage in my own home. Not the a-hole, but I think I'd hold off until I got this on camera like you suggested, because otherwise he's going to deny it. It'll make it easier to get husband to understand what's actually happening. Not the a-hole. He's 24 with a good paying job. It doesn't take 6 months to acclimate back to the area. If he wanted to be respectful, I'd understand letting him stay. Since he doesn't want to appreciate the opportunity to fatten up his savings account for a down payment on a mortgage, let him rent. Not the a-hole. Your friend is right. You certainly married someone with a kid. Whether that kid is grown is up for debate. I think overtly putting up cameras would be bad optics if your husband already doesn't believe you. I'm assuming you've tried to tell him about this. I also think Colin would only be more careful if there were cameras around. I would start just taking photos and/or recording conversations to document these instances. Whether recording conversations where you are is legal, I'm not sure, but I'd be shocked if recording a conversation just to show your husband would lead to a legal issue. If your husband sees or hears how Colin speaks to you and nothing changes though, that's a whole other issue.